Today, we preview the 2025 New York Yankees with Peter Appel from Just Baseball. You're listening to the Bucko Banter podcast brought to you by the Just Baseball Media Network. Cue the music.
Rockin' 101, she compliment my taste. Whiskey in my lemonade, cause I like the way it tastes. Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates. Order steak by the plates, and in case after case, run my race at my pace, clear the grass of the snake.
Welcome back to another team preview. Today we have the New York Yankees, and we're joined by none other than Pistol Peter Appel. I was going to say Maravich there for a second. Welcome on, Peter.
What's going on, boys? Good to be on. Talk some Yankees. I'm excited.
Yeah, let's get into it, man. The AL East is an exciting division. I think it's going to possibly be 3 teams this year that are going to all make the playoffs. 2024 was a great year for the Yankees. Obviously came short. 94, 68, first in the AL East. Let's look at the additions and subtractions this offseason, because I'm looking at it on paper, some great names here, but I'm wondering, is this enough for this division? Real quick, Tim Hill is back. Jonathan Loaiziga re-signed. Paul Goldschmidt, Max Fried, Tyler Matzik on a minor league deal. Dominic Smith on a minor league deal. JT Brubaker, former Bucko, had to throw that one in there, re-signed. Outfielder trade, Cody Bellinger, Devin Williams, Fernando Cruz, Alex Jackson. And then, of course, we lost Clay Holmes, Gleyber Torres, Juan Soto, Tommy Kahnle, John Birdie, and Tim Meza. One current Bucko and one former Bucko on there as well. Verdugo is a free agent still. And then via trade, we lost Jose Trevino, Nestor Cortez, Cody Poteet, Caleb Durbin, Taylor Trammell, and Carlos Narvaez, excuse me. How are we feeling about this offseason, Peter?
So we just reviewed the offseason on the Just Baseball show, and they didn't quite make our 5 biggest winners. Even though Jack, my co-host on the show, he was saying that the Yankees did the best that they could to replace the elephant in the room, which is Juan Soto. But the thing is, how can I put them in the winner category when you lose a top 3, top 4 hitter in Major League Baseball? I think they did pretty well, but again, can't call them a winner when you lose Juan Soto and still haven't addressed the third base position, because they made a ton of moves, right? You bring in Cody Bellinger. Is he going to play first? Is he going to play outfield? Where is he going to play? Paul Goldschmidt is probably going to play first. Like, they brought in some relievers. They bring in Max Fried. All of that is great, but there's still a hole at third base, and the hole in our hearts that Juan Soto left. It's going to be hard to repair that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to even dare say did they build Juan Soto in the aggregate, because that's impossible. But were they able to? Do you think they were able to do more by going out? I know they're like 1-year deals for Paul Goldschmidt. They traded for Cody Bellinger. They bring in Max Fried on a pretty big deal. Some people call it an overpay, but I thought it was a good deal. Do you think they were able to do more, given that they didn't bring back Juan Soto? As painful as that sounds.
Definitely they were able to do more, and I think they transitioned this offseason. Last year, they had a very good pitching staff and a good bullpen, but the offense could just rake, especially bringing over Jazz Chisholm. When you have Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, you could have us 3 in the 3, 4, 5 spot, and we're still going to score some runs, right? So I think they focused on run prevention rather than run scoring this offseason, and more making a balanced attack on offense, bringing in Paul Goldschmidt, bringing in Cody Bellinger, bringing in the likes of those guys, but then, of course, adding Max Fried, and then adding Devin Williams into this bullpen, right? Because we already saw what Luke Weaver can do, but you lose Clay Holmes, you got to bring in somebody better, and they did with Devin Williams. So the rotation and the bullpen looks better than last year, but the lineup still leaves a little bit to be desired, but you can still win plenty of games with this formula that they've created.
Speaking of the lineup, let's go through the projected Fangraphs lineup here. Second base, Jazz Chisholm Jr., right field, Aaron Judge, center field, Cody Bellinger, first base, Paul Goldschmidt, catcher, Austin Wells, shortstop, Anthony Volpe, at DH, Ben Rice to start the season, left field, Jason Dominguez, and at third base, Oswaldo Cabrera. And then on the bench, we got Alex Jackson, DJ LeMahieu, Oswald Peraza, and Trent Grisham. Looking at the lineup, I mean, obviously pretty good. That's coming from a Pirates fan, though. where are the holes here? What can we see going into 2025?
So the holes here is at third base with Oswaldo Cabrera. And we're going to talk about it a little bit later. You could say Ben Rice is a hole at DH, at least right now, because, of course, Giancarlo Stanton has two separate tennis elbows. I'm not sure how that's even possible, but I don't think Ben Rice is going to end up being a hole. I wouldn't say there's any real hole outside of third base because Jason Dominguez, of course, has so much potential. We are all expecting, at least I am, Anthony Volpe to take a step up offensively. Austin Wells finished as a top 3. I think he finished 2 in the Rookie of the Year voting in the American League. Paul Goldschmidt is still a fine option at first base. Cody Bellinger, a fine option. Aaron Judge, of course, is the best hitter in baseball. And Jazz Chisholm is one of the best second basemen. So I wouldn't say there's a hole outside of third base, but there's not as much thump at a couple of positions. It's good enough hitters to be league average at each position outside of third base.
What I like most about this is that Aaron Judge gets moved back to right field. Not that he's bad in center field, but you'd like to see him full season not have to play center field. And he gets to move back up into that 2 spot. Third base, Oswaldo Cabrera, and there's not really, I don't want to say there's not much behind him, but you got Oswald Peraza that can play there.
DJ LeMahieu. DJ LeMahieu helping him out. Sure.
Yeah. But could you see there being a trade even, I don't know if it's before the deadline or even throughout spring training for a guy like Ryan McMahon? I know that's a name that's always floated out there as a trade candidate, but it seems like Colorado's reluctant to give him up. But it seems like that's where they're going to have to improve that position. Would you agree?
I would hope so. But the fact is that they haven't done it means they're confident enough that a Oswaldo Cabrera, DJ LeMahieu platoon is going to be their option at third base, right? They didn't sign Alex Bregman. Their division rival did for 3 years, $120 million. Isaac Paredes was on the trade market, and he went from the Cubs to the Astros, not the Yankees. So when you look at viable guys that the Yankees should trade for, does Ryan McMahon really move the needle? Right? He's better than Oswaldo Cabrera, but do the Yankees want to give up assets for someone who might elevate that position slightly? Right? Because when you combine both guys are decent defenders. I mean, DJ LeMahieu, as he continues to age, we'll see, but he's been fine over there. And Oswaldo Cabrera has also been fine. It's looking grim. And there's not a lot of options that you could look at and say, oh, this trade makes a lot of sense. Of course, I'd give the Guardians our entire farm system if they're willing to give us Jose Ramirez, but of course, that's not going to happen. Potentially, would the Padres want to move off Manny Machado's contract? Potentially. But do the Yankees want to take on that type of money is also another question. And then you'd have to give up assets. So I think they're just going to roll with it, unfortunately.
Yeah. My biggest thing here is, one, I'm excited to see a full year of Jason Dominguez. Fingers crossed he could stay healthy. But we're going from Verdugo, who had, I believe, a 2-run value in left field, to Dominguez, who I think is -3 career run value in left field. Not the greatest defender. I think there's definitely room for improvement. I think he can make that. But how concerned are we from a defensive perspective? And also, as a right-handed hitter, there's a lot to be desired there. I know it's a small sample size, but how has he looked this spring as a switch hitter? Is that something that they might look into possibly just going from the left side? I guess I'm curious about his entire game, in a much larger sample size.
It's a good question, but the thing is, the answer is not exactly maybe what you'd be looking for. I don't want to make any assumptions on Jason Dominguez yet at all. And what I mean by that is he has been a prospect for so long, right? We hear about prospect fatigue in Major League Baseball, right? You guys probably understand it with a guy like O'Neal Cruz. Right. When people immediately say, oh, I don't think he can play center, you say, why are we putting a ceiling on this guy? Even though he's 26 years old, right? Dominguez is still in his early 20s. He's just been such a top prospect for so long that he's been nitpicked day after day for what seems like years. So for a guy like Jason Dominguez saying he's struggling in left field, it makes sense. He's a very, very young player that's been shot up their farm system, comes up as a center fielder, and then in the majors, they say, hey, go play left field. And, for the casual baseball fan watching someone play left field, it seems pretty easy. But for anyone who's played those positions, you know that the reads are completely different. So I'm willing to give him somewhat of a grace period in just learning that position. And I think because he's such a good athlete, he will eventually become league average with, again, upside for more. because he is such a good athlete. And with the right-handed swing, that has kind of been a problem throughout the minor league journey. But again, he is so young. But the left-handed swing looks awesome. We can't forget when he came up in 2023, he lit the world on fire, right? He put up a 160 WRC plus. It was just so short-lived. Then he comes up, different position, and they're bringing him up and down, which is so tough for a young guy like that, especially when you're getting vaulted into a playoff race. It's a little bit different when we're sitting in August or September, your team is 20 games under, and they say, hey, just go get reps. Right? We just want to see what you got. Versus if you don't make this play, we're going to lose this game and we could be out of a playoff hunt. That type of pressure is a lot for a guy learning a new position, which can then carry over into his offensive approach. So for Jason Dominguez, yes, the right-handed swing is still a work in progress. The ability to play left field still a work in progress, but that's okay when you're 21, 22, 23 years old.
Yeah, I think it's also that the handling of him has been a little bit odd, especially last year. I think he was called up during the Little League Classic for
against Scooball.
Right.
Like we're talking about that right-handed swing.
Yeah.
Oh, you're struggling with right-handed swing? Go face Scooball on national TV. I mean, that's just not fair. That's just mean.
In a weird environment, like just very odd, but looking forward to him for sure. Scott, why don't you bring us into the rotation?
Yeah, before I go into the rotation, I want to say you talk about the up and down and the handling of minor league players. And growing up, following the Yankees, because I'm a big Derek Jeter fan. It seems like they do this a lot, that front office. Not the front office hasn't really changed. I mean, you look at like Miguel Andujar, Clint Frazier. I mean, I know these guys had injuries too. And Peraza seems to be handled kind of in a weird way. Now Dominguez, is this like a trend or is this just a coincidence?
I think when evaluating the Yankees, they are different from other teams because when, all we hear, when I'm listening to Brian Cashman speak or anybody in the front office, it's just really hard to break into this team, right? The Yankees haven't been under 500 in the last 20 years. They routinely sign the big time free agents to play those positions. But when they get a guy who they believe in, they let him go. Austin Wells is a good example.
Sure.
Right? They knew that he was going to be the catcher. He becomes the catcher. Anthony Volpe. There was even bumps in the road early on. He's the shortstop. Aaron Judge, right? He wasn't a perfect hitter when he came up. There was a lot of swing and miss. The power was absurd. But even during that time, I'm forgetting his name. He now plays in the KBO.
Austin.
Tyler Austin, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember at the beginning when
he got in that big fight with the Red Sox, didn't he?
Exactly. Do you remember when both of those guys were hitting home runs kind of at the same moment when they both got called up? Tyler Austin didn't exactly get the run that Aaron Judge was. So when they fully believe in you, they're giving you the run. When they're not totally sold, that's when you're going to go up and down a little bit. I think Jason Dominguez is different just because he was called up so young and because there's so much pedigree with him. So they like Aaron Judge, I don't think he got called up until he's 25, 26 years old, right? Every guy's development is different. So it's really hard to break into the Yankees. So it's not all the time their fault, right? When Anthony Rizzo comes back, what do you do with Ben Rice? When DJ LeMahieu is at third, what do you do with Oswald Peraza? When they trade for Jazz Chisholm, what are they supposed to do with these guys? So I wouldn't say that I harp on the Yankees bringing guys up and down. It is obviously difficult as a fan, and it's just difficult to break into the Yankees lineup.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thinking about Anthony Volpe, I mean, there were people calling for him to be sent down, but they stuck with him for that full season his rookie year. So that's a good point. Into the rotation, though, you were starting the year with Luis Hill on the injured list potentially, and then Chase Hampton, he's a prospect, I know, but he's out for the year. Sounds like he's going to get UCL surgery, and then JT Brubaker's out now. That guy's had a rough go. So your rotation is Garrett Cole, Max Fried, Carlos Rodon, Clark Schmidt, and Marcus Stroman. Pretty solid still. And then you got guys like Will Warren, Cookie Carrasco was a guy they signed on a minor's contract, but Will Warren has looked pretty good in the spring so far. I don't want to put too much weight on spring stats, but how do you feel about this rotation going into opening day?
This is the best part of the Yankees. I mean, Garrett Cole, I was just listening to an interview he did on Casa de Club, Corey Kluber's podcast, and just talking about the hunger that still remains with him. And we forget, like, this guy got hurt, but there was no structural damage in the elbow. And then he comes back, takes a second to kind of get his groove back, and then has a really good September, and then looks like Garrett Cole in the playoffs. Garrett Cole is a grinder. He is going to be awesome. Max Fried is one of the best left-handed pitchers in Major League Baseball. He's the 2. Carlos Rodon is up and down, but when he's up, it's awesome. When he's down, not so much, but not so bad to have in your 3rd spot in your rotation rather than 2 last year. Luis Gil is hurt, right? He got shut down with a high-grade right lat strain, I think is the name of the injury, and he's going to be shut down for 6 weeks. But the Yankees have so much depth that they can take their time with him. Let him come back. Let him get his groove back. And then maybe in May or June, he comes back firing. We can't forget he won American League Rookie of the Year. And then you have a slew of depth here that can weather the storm while he's gone, whether that be Clark Schmidt, whether that be Marcus Stroman. But the most excited I am about a pitcher is Will Warren. And I know spring training, but 8 innings and only 1 earned run, that's great. But when you watch him, I mean, when Pitching Ninja is posting those side-by-sides between him and Michael King, it's hard for us not to get excited.
Yeah.
And then taking Michael King completely out of the equation, we're watching him dominate MLB lineups. I mean, against the Phillies, the only mistake he had was on a first pitch to Max Kepler, who clipped a home run. But he's blowing fastballs by Kyle Schwarber and Bryce Harper. The sweeper looks really tight. The sinker is going into righties. His changeup looks better. So everything looks better for a guy like him. And we also have to remember that Will Warren is one of the top prospects in the Yankee system, but he came up last year, got clipped, even though the underlying metrics said he got wildly unlucky. But this is a guy that the Yankees are building behind. And with their recent success with pitchers, whether that be Luis Gil or whether that be Michael King going over to San Diego or potentially Drew Thorpe taking a next step with the Chicago White Sox, you can see the development process with the arms continue to get better and better. And that's why, as a Yankee fan, the most excited I am for a player right now that's younger, right, as a prospect, is Will Warren.
Yeah, he's having a Jared Jones spring like he had last year, just absolutely dominant. I think he's got 11 Ks in 8 innings. Like,
I wish we had Jared Jones. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah, that'd be well, even me, as excited as I am comparing Will Warren to Jared Jones right now, I'm giving that to you guys. Jared Jones is a little bit higher right now for sure.
Yeah, he's a dog. He's a dog for sure. Let's go into the bullpen, Peter. Closer, you added Devin Williams, the airbender. Awesome. In the setup roles, you got Luke Weaver, Ian Hamilton, and then middle relief, Fernando Cruz, Tim Hill, Mark Leiter Jr. Tyler Matzik is projected to make get a middle relief spot as a non-roster invite. And then Yoendris Gomez in the long man role. Is there anyone out of camp that you think could also break this? I know it's a rotating door throughout the season. There's going to be guys going up and down, DFA'd. How do you feel about this bullpen? And is there anyone else you'd like to see get some innings?
I would just say some of the guys that are hurt that are going to come back this year, like Jake Cousins was really good for the Yankees last year. They bring back Jonathan Loaizaga, and unfortunately, Scott Effross goes down again. If you remember, Scott Effross was traded for Hayden Wesneski with the Cubs. This submariner, he was developing into one of the better relievers in the National League, and that's why the Yankees traded for him and traded a good arm for him. Right now, Hayden Wesneski was included in that trade over to Houston for Kyle Tucker, and he's hurt again. But those 3 arms, all at their peak, can be high leverage arms, and that's not even including what the Yankees have right now. One thing that is interesting to me that the Yankees have really gone after, right-handed changeup guys. I've never seen a bullpen with this many right-handed dominant changeups. Talk about Devin Williams. You talk about Luke Weaver, Ian Hamilton, Fernando Cruz, Mark Leiter Jr. How many bullpens have 5 guys where their best pitch is their changeup? And with Ian Hamilton, it's called like a slombio or something. It's like a slider changeup. Nasty pitch. I don't even know what they call it these days, but he's disgusting. But this bullpen is really good. And what the Yankees needed to do also was increase their strikeout rate. Last year, Clay Holmes, even Luke Weaver, a lot of these guys, they were more ground ball relievers, but they bring in Fernando Cruz, who was rocking a strikeout rate above 30%. Of course, you have Devin Williams with the big time strikeout rate. You bring back Jonathan Loaizaga, who can strike out a lot of guys too. So they're improving in that sort of sense. But looking at the pitching staff, it's hard not to be really excited. But then we go back to the offense, and it's like, can you hit enough? And of course they will, because they are the favorites in the American League, but it's just not quite the same as last year.
Yeah, it's funny, especially for guys, especially 2-pitch guys, relievers. You'd think that a lot of coaches usually have guys try to develop a feel for spin rather than have a fastball changeup. And we talked to Tim Mesa like over a month ago, former Yankee, and he was telling us like he was a fastball changeup guy, I think, out of Millersville, and he was just like, yeah, in Toronto, they're like, gotta scrap the changeup and go and develop a slider, because if you're going to be a 2-pitch guy, that changeup better be really good. And so imagine this Yankees bullpen if they still had like Tommy Kahnle, they'd have a bunch of changeup guys. But let's go into prospects, Peter. Who are some prospects that you're really excited to follow this year, or who you think will make an impact on this roster?
Well, in terms of making an impact and prospects I'm really high on, they're a little bit different. So in terms of prospects that I don't think will make an impact this year, but it's hard not to be extremely excited, George Lombard Jr. comes to the top of the list. That swing is money.
I think he hit a home run off of Hunter Barco the other day.
Yeah, he smacked an opposite field single off of Zach Wheeler as well. It just looks so good. The
two-hand
setup
finish,
is perfect.
Unbelievable.
It's short and quick to the ball, but he's got some pop in there too. He's really exciting, and understanding that he comes from an incredibly athletic family. His brother, Jacob Lombard, I don't think it's junior, but I think it's just Jacob Lombard, is going to be a top 5, top 10 pick in the 2026 draft. Wow. So George coming up the pipeline again at the shortstop position, which is interesting with Anthony Volpe, but he's a guy you never know where he's going to play. But knowing Anthony Volpe is the shortstop of the future, hard to see him making an impact this year. And he was just drafted like 2 years ago, or maybe even a year ago. But that's a prospect I'm really high on. In terms of young guys that I expect to make a big impact for the Yankees, we kind of already talked about Will Warren, but I want to gas up Ben Rice in this DH spot, because while Stanton is gone, I think Ben Rice is going to hit his way into a spot where Aaron Boone cannot get him out of the lineup. We forget that Ben Rice was tearing it up through the minor leagues. And then we go kind of month by month, because he was called up when Anthony Rizzo went down. Comes up in June, 708 OPS. Then in July, it gets even better. He hit 7 home runs in the month of July to put up a 760 OPS. And then Anthony Rizzo gets called back in, and then it just goes up and down, and he's not able to capitalize on this season. But he's a guy with really good plate discipline skills. He barreled 15.6% of balls last year, which was in the 90th percentile in Major League Baseball. This is a lefty swing that almost, even though this is a bad story, kind of reminds me of Greg Bird, when Greg Bird was really killing it for the Yankees. Hopefully Ben Rice's story doesn't end up like Greg Bird, but you can kind of see those similarities there. The big lefty, the short porch, but he's also a line drive hitter. I think he is going to make an impact where Aaron Boone cannot get him out of the lineup once Giancarlo Stanton comes back. Maybe that's platooning with a guy like Paul Goldschmidt, getting Goldschmidt to face lefties more often. I don't know how they're going to work it, but knowing they have a deficiency at third base, can we find a way to figure out to get Ben Rice's bat in the lineup and not Oswaldo Cabrera or DJ LeMahieu? Don't know how that's going to work, but that's a dream of mine.
Peter, what about a pick to click? Who on this current roster is going to help take this Yankees team to the next level?
So we've been asking ourselves this entire offseason, who's the second best hitter on the New York Yankees? Right? Aaron Judge is the clear winner, but is it Jazz Chisholm? Is it Austin Wells? Is it Goldschmidt? Is it Bellinger? Could it be Giancarlo Stanton or Ben Rice or Jason Dominguez? We don't really know. But what I do feel pretty damn confident in is Jazz Chisholm really taking a step as one of the better second basemen in baseball. Because Jazz Chisholm, when he came over to the Yankees, he was phenomenal. Now, it didn't exactly translate into postseason success, but again, it kind of was his first postseason run, so I'll give him a break there. But when we look at what he did with the Yankees, in 46 games, slugged over 500, put up a 132 WRC plus, which was 32% better than league average, hit 11 home runs, and stole 18 bases. Now, if you parcel that out over 162 games, I mean, that's 35-60. He's not going to do that. But he was 24-40 last year. Can he be a guy who's in the 25 to 30 home run range with 40 to 50 stolen bases? I don't think that's impossible. And the defense is going to be at least league average, because we have to remember, he's been switching positions a ton. He was great. The Yankees said, can you play third base? And he's like, I'll play anywhere. He did it well. He plays a solid third base.
Yeah.
So he's a guy you can move around the diamond. He's going to get his home runs. He's going to steal a lot of bases. I think when we're talking about the second best hitter on the Yankees this season, I think it's going to be Jazz Chisholm. And third, I really think it's going to be Austin Wells. Right? When you look at batted ball quality, he hits the piss out of the baseball, and he also takes his walks. He's not chasing too much outside of the zone. He's kind of your classic good AB every single at-bat. Doesn't give anything away, and also has plenty of power. But the defense has been a calling card for him. The receiving, framing has gotten so much better. He's a real staple at the catcher position. So I think when we're looking at the Yankees offense, while they brought in Bellinger and while they brought in Goldschmidt, I think the three best hitters on the Yankees this season are going to be Aaron Judge, obviously, then Jazz Chisholm, then Austin Wells.
Peter, before we let you go, how about a 2025 prediction? Could be player oriented or like a team result. Where are they going to finish? Are they going to the World Series again? Where is this team finishing in the AL East?
So I am a Yankee fan, but I have us finishing second in the division.
Okay.
I worry that while I did just, talk up Jazz Chisholm and I did just talk up Austin Wells, Yankees are one Aaron Judge injury away from struggling. And I'm nervous about that, right? And it's just I go into the year always nervous, for Judge. Judge has been able to stay healthy. And the last injury he had was more of a freak injury. If we remember, he ran into the right field wall at Dodger Stadium, hurting his foot. So he has been healthy, but I see what the Yankees look like without him. And with Luis Gil already on the shelf, I think the Red Sox have done enough in order to win this division. But that's not to say that the Yankees won't make the playoffs. I still think that the Yankees are going to win anywhere from 88 to 92 games, make it in the playoffs, and then, of course, anything can happen, especially when you have Garrett Cole and Max Fried and Carlos Rodon, or maybe it's Luis Gil at the top of your rotation with that bullpen. They might be better set up in the playoffs than potentially in the regular season, if that makes sense. So I have the Yankees finishing second, but still being probably the second best team in the American League. I think the Red Sox have an opportunity to be the best.
Yeah, it's hard to beat that offseason that they had that the Red Sox have put together. It's truly incredible. That rotation is going to be nasty. Peter, appreciate you joining us. Where can everybody find you at?
Absolutely. You can find me at a lot of places. You can find me on Twitter at PeterAppel23. You can follow our TikTok at Just Baseball Fans. You can follow our Instagram at Just Baseball Show. I write a daily best bet article when the season is coming along on justbaseball.com. And I think those are most of the places you can find me. But I just do a lot of things. I love talking baseball.
Beautiful.
Appreciate it, Peter.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Best seats at the Pirates game, they let me run the base. Yeah, my time is like my money, cause I can't afford to waste. Wifey is a lawyer, take my date to my dates, or the steak by the plates and